Ship released. Engines engaged.
Hunt for the Dedicant. Pilots Federation alert. Traces of a distress call from the Dedicant megaship have been detected in the LP-700-1458 system. Vice Admiral Amir Rafiq, a spokesperson for the Imperial Navy, broadcast an announcement on all public channels. An Imperial scout ship traveling through LP-700-1458 has intercepted several fragmentary signals. Their identifying markers confirmed that they originated from the Dedicant. We believe there has been an encryption error in the system's communication beacons, which prevented the distress call from being rerouted to its intended destination in the Federation. Officially, the Imperial Navy no longer performs joint operations with our federal counterparts, nor do we involve ourselves in the activities of the illegal Far God cult. Nevertheless, we are sharing this information as a humanitarian gesture. Our hope is that this may aid a rescue mission for those trapped aboard the lost megaship. The Dedicant made an unscheduled hyperspace jump from the Poponcha system on the 15th of June. while imprisoned members of the Order of the Far God were being transferred on board to be relocated in the Alliance. Executive Agent Jalen Locke of the Federal Intelligence Agency released a statement. It is unexpected to receive any kind of assistance from the Empire, but on this occasion we are grateful. 3 security teams, comprised of 50 agents each, are currently on the Dedicant along with over 8,000 cultists. This is the first indication that the megaship remains intact and that our people are calling for help. FIA specialists are en route to the LP-714-58 system. However, deciphering interstellar comms signals is a difficult and time-consuming task. We would appreciate any assistance from independent pilots if they are able to detect any further messages. Azimuth releases new AX weapon. Pilots Federation alert. Rare goods delivered to Zywanga helped ensure that Azimuth Biotech's arms convention was a success. CEO Torben Raidmaker confirmed the initiative's completion. From today, the overcharged Chimbled AX multi-cannon with autoloader is available at all rescue megaships, as well as Azimuth Biotech's core markets. I am confident that this will prove useful those brave pilots who enter combat with Thargoid ships. Once again, my company has proved that its ingenuity and experience in developing anti-Xeno weaponry cannot be surpassed. I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to all of the corporate, financial and military representatives who attended the convention. Many fascinating proposals were discussed, most of which must remain commercially confidential for now. Suffice to say, the future for Azimuth Biotech and our partners looks bright. Finally, the event was helped enormously by the supplies of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilead signature weapons and Hama silver sea rum, as well as those who eliminated criminal elements in the Zywanga system. I have authorized reimbursement for delivered goods from Musashi and bounty vouchers from Cartier City. Newsfeeds, business analysts and ICE channels have discussed the clandestine nature of Azimuth Biotech's convention. Some wondered if the corporation would be able to function without external financing. Others suggested that cooperation with mainstream companies may rehabilitate Azimuth in the eyes of the superpowers. The attendance of senior staff from the Holloway Bioscience Institute has also raised eyebrows within the scientific community. An editorial in the Empirical remarked, Holloway's expertise in studying vacuum-dwelling life forms is almost unparalleled. If Azimuth were to forge closer ties with the Institute, the resulting xenological research capabilities might even surpass those of...
John, Oscar, Whiskey, Romeo, you're clear for approach, Commander. Submit a request and enjoy your stay. Okay, Commander. Please land on pad 39er. Acknowledged, Commander. Clear for system docking.
Potential candidates outline manifestos. Three candidates in the federal presidential election have taken part in a second-lived debate to discuss policies. The event was more closely moderated than the first debate in June. The candidates discussed their campaigns in detail, with minimal interruption from their rivals. Republican Party candidate Jerome Archer is the current vice president and a former director of the Federal Intelligence Agency. He explained his intentions to tighten security and increase military spending. Shielding citizens from external threats, whether human or alien, is always my top priority. Ms. Winters lacks any significant achievements in her political career, if we're honest. Whereas I can refer to many successes, such as the Proactive Detection Bureau, which prove I am a man of my word. Shadow President Felicia Winters, leader of the Liberal Party, was previously the Secretary of State in Jasmina Halsey's administration. She outlined her plans to reinvest in civil infrastructure by increasing corporate taxation. Our economic model will look to increase tax revenue generated by large corporations, greatly improving the quality of life for billions of people through public service investment. Mr. Archer's obsession with police state programs can only push the Federation further toward an authoritarian dystopia. Independent candidate
Gear retracted.
Zachary Rackett is a well-known business magnate who privately owns many federal companies. His campaign pledges have proved highly popular, but remain light on detail. Is anyone else as bored of these two windbags as I am? All politicians do is make empty promises, but I'm in the business of giving people what they want. As president, I'll make every single person rich and successful, just like, say it with me, come on, just like me. All three candidates pledged to prioritize funding for the Federal Navy's anti-Xeno efforts until the ongoing conflict with the Thargoids reaches a conclusion. In related news, Congress confirmed
Frameshift drive charging.
that the election date has been shifted again.
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Refugee advocacy groups have argued that all residents of federal systems lost to Thargoid invasion are entitled to vote, and the active re-registration of this demographic in new territories has forced a further delay. The election is now expected to be held in the last quarter of 3309. Deliver rarities for Azimuth event. Pilots Federation alert. Azimuth Biotech has requested shipments of rare commodities to Zywangda as luxury supplies for its business convention. Torben Raidmaker, CEO of the Anti-Xeno Corporation, announced the initiative via public channels. We expect this prestigious gathering to be attended by many representatives from research groups, manufacturing companies, and military forces. To ensure that our esteemed guests are made welcome, we will pay handsomely for shipments of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilia signature weapons, and Harma Silver Sea rum. The cornerstone of this event will be the commercial launch of Azimuth's newly modified ship-mounted weapon, the pre-engineered overcharged Thimbled AX multi-cannon with autoloader. Our proprietary redesign will make a significant contribution when engaging Thargoid vessels in combat. Those who contribute the greatest number of rare goods will be rewarded with some of these revolutionary modules. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Corcoran, who coordinates the Alliance's involvement with Aegis, remarked on Azimuth's campaign during an interview for the Old World's Gazette. Anything that increases survivability against the Thargoids is surely welcome. But it does grind a little when it comes from the same organization that escalated the war so significantly. Furthermore, Mr. Raidmaker is placing a positive spin on Azimuth's connections with third parties, rather than admit that it is a necessity. Activist groups such as Operation Witch Hunt have diminished the corporation's stellar influence in recent months. Their actions might have forced Azimuth to rely on external support in order to compete with Aegis. Pilots can make their deliveries to Musashi in the Zywangda system. Azimuth Biotech has acknowledged that transporting these valuable items increases the likelihood of being targeted by pirate forces. The corporation will therefore offer a further reward for redeeming bounty vouchers at Cartier City on wanted ships in the system, in order to maintain local security. Azimuth Plans Corporate Convention. Azimuth Biotech has announced an invitation invitation-only event for prospective business partners and military liaisons. CEO Torben Raidmaker provided a statement to the media. New opportunities have emerged for Azimuth to resume the lead in anti-Xeno operations. With Thargoid fleets rampaging through the core systems, and Aegis's questionable policy of providing utility modules over increased firepower, humanity's defense once again appeals to us. But our organization will no longer work in solitude. I have extended the hand of partnership to selected financiers, military figures, research groups, and manufacturing companies. They are invited to convene and discuss methods of helping us to resist the evil of the Thargoids. Business analyst Marlon Royce published his report via Vox Galactica. Ostensibly, this appears to be a public relations exercise for Azimuth Biotech. However, the company's relative lack of support from independent pilots in a recent Thargoid tissue sample initiative has accelerated the company's search for allies. Rumors among the tech community hint that the convention precedes the announcement of a weapon schematic redesign to win the appetite of investors. Azimuth is using private couriers to transport guests returned from the convention entirely at its own expense. This generous professional courtesy also guarantees anonymity for attendees, making it difficult to determine who is on Raidmaker's guest list. Given nerves over Operation Without Disruption, this seems a wise choice. We do know that Herculean machines and space
targets destroyed.
Carter are sending representatives. Anya Gupta, CEO of Holloway Bioscience Institute, also agreed to meet with the rival Xeno researcher. But the rest are avoiding being publicly associated with Azimuth Biotech, which faced enormous criticism for its role in the Battle of HIP 22460 and the Thargoid's subsequent retaliation. Coca-Cola Mining Initiative concludes. Pilots Federation alert. A mining campaign organized by Coca-Cola Limited has drawn to a close, with the organizers declaring it a success. The Federal Corporation requested deliveries of bertrandite, coltan, and praseodymium to supply the Coca-Cola Systems refinery base, ostensibly to manufacture supplies for the Federal Navy's anti-Xeno war efforts. Spokesperson Paul Dyson provided a message to participants. It is genuinely a pleasure to see so many pilots respond to our call for raw material.
Target destroyed. Frameshift drive charging.
Harvesting those asteroid belts is
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
no easy task, but the performance has been remarkable. I can promise all those involved in the campaign that the profits raised from refining and distributing these resources will go to a very worthy cause. Those credits are in good hands. Coca-Cola Limited has confirmed that all contributors to the campaign can now collect their rewards from Utley Hub in the Coca-Cola system. Imperial Mother in medical emergency. Lady Florence Lavigny, the mother of Emperor Arisa Lavigny Duval, has been placed under medical supervision following a sudden illness. An official statement was released by the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Mother, Lady Florence Lavigny, has suffered an unexpected medical emergency. She is being cared for by a specialist team at her Lake Parizeau estate on the planet Topaz. Details of her illness are not being shared at this time. Her Majesty the Emperor has cancelled all appointments and travelled to be at her mother's side. The latest report states that Lady Lavigny has undergone surgical treatment and is in a poor but stable condition. We know that all citizens will join us in wishing the best for this prominent member of the Imperial family. Royal correspondent Gudrun Vesterkor provided some background to the story. The Duvals always ensure that each Emperor's parents are afforded the greatest respect, not to mention the finest medical care. Although the Imperial Mother's ailment remains unspecified, not many fear it to be fatal at this early stage. Though Lady Lavigny's engagement to the late Emperor Hengist Duval brought the highest of profiles, she has typically sought to avoid the spotlight. Despite this, she has repeatedly been in the eye of a media storm. In 3250, her husband Prince Aristide de Lavigny met with a mysterious accident that was never fully explained. Decades later, it was revealed that their daughter Arisa had been sired by Emperor Hengist. Upon being selected by the Senate in 3301, Arisa adopted the new surname of Lavigny Duval to reflect her previously unknown royal heritage. Princess Aisling Duval, Archduke Otto Lombardo Duval, Countess Guinevere Lavigny and many other imperial family members have all sent their hopes for a rapid recovery. A similar message came from Hadrian Augustus
Frameshift drive charging.
Duval in an apparent attempt to rebuild bridges after his recent public spat with the emperor. As the descendant of another of Hengist's affairs, perhaps Hadrian feels more of a kinship with Florence Lavigny
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
and most others in the Duval dynasty. Thargoid War Update, June 3309. The latest report on the ongoing struggle against the Thargoids.
Mission objective detected.
Vox Galactica reporter Jade Sanderlin. As the war reaches its 8th month, Thargoid
Incoming mission critical message.
invasion forces occupy over 1,000 systems. Billions of people have been evacuated or lost as a result. Although this ongoing conflict has made little impact on everyday life for the other side of the bubble, it continues to dominate the media. The beginning of June saw the release of Aegis's latest development, the Pulse Wave Xeno Scanner. This module allows any pilots who dares approach the Titans to gather much-needed data, triggering what the Empirical referred to as a scientific gold rush. We are a long way from fully comprehending the purpose of these gargantuan constructs, but the tools to do so are at least beginning to arrive. Unsurprisingly, Azimuth Biotech also declared its interest in the Titans. This led to the corporation competing indirectly with Aegis to collect tissue samples directly from the hull of the Thargoid motherships. Although there was significantly greater support for the Tri-Superpower Agency, no doubt an encouraging sign for Aegis's Professor Tesro, Azimuth's results suggest that some retain faith in Salvation's legacy. On the subject of faith, another media talking point was the recent mysterious disappearance of the Dedicant. This order of the Far God megaship, impounded for months by the FIA, was scheduled to deport tens of thousands of imprisoned adherents from the Federation to the Alliance. But with only a few thousand on board, the ship made a sudden hyperspace jump out of Popontia. Theories abound as to its fate, ranging from a simple engine malfunction to the Far God rescuing its loyal worshippers. Even in wartime, it seems everyone loves a mystery. On the front lines, of course, there is no time for such distractions. Thargoid glaives hunt down human ships. Revenants seek to eliminate human trespassers on conquered worlds. Titans launch wave after wave of Thargoid vessels further into the core systems. Here, the focus remains locked onto the deadliest adversary we have ever faced. But the resistance is holding fast, and some traction is being made by anti-Xeno forces. Systems are being recovered from alien control. There is hope that the tide is slowly turning. This is Jade Sanderlin for Vox Galactica. Stay safe out there. Mining initiative begins in Kokola. Pilots Federation alert. A campaign to attract deep space mining pilots has been launched by the federal corporation Kokola Limited. With the Federation diverting considerable resources towards sustaining its anti-Xeno countermeasures, some systems are looking to alternative options for sustaining stocks of raw materials. Kokola Limited is seeking to take advantage of
Frameshift drive charging.
strong position in its home system by running a campaign to procure additional resources.
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
The local economy. Spokesperson Paul Dyson had the following to say: I believe that continued support of the Federal Navy's efforts to protect us is an obligation of all stellar factions. It would be in poor taste to complain or seek sympathy for the impact on our business operations while our brave military personnel risk their lives to keep us safe. That said, while the galactic economy continues to function, it high incomes to fund the war via taxes and charitable contributions. One could say that maximizing profits is our moral duty. Therefore, raw materials are requested to keep our refineries churning out resources. Coca-Cola Limited has invited all asteroid miners to bring shipments of bertrandite, coltan and praseodymium to Utley Hub in the Coca-Cola system. Presidential candidates hold live debate. Vice President Jerome Archer, Shadow President Felicia Winters, and entrepreneur Zachary Rackham have exchanged political views in a live debate. The Republican, Liberal and Independent candidates came together for an event that was broadcast across all federal media networks. The event provided a platform to outline each candidate's manifestos for voters and engage in discourse on key issues. The debate began smoothly, but did not continue in that vein as the three strong personalities clashed just a few questions in. Shortly after the broadcast, ICE channels began circulating a particularly popular segment in response to a question about federal policy on public safety. Archer, vigilance will be our watchword, and I aim to continue President Hudson's excellent record on security. Rackham, oh, is that a fact? Lost any megaships recently? Jerome. Archer, it's hardly appropriate for me to comment on an ongoing FIA investigation. Although I realize that appropriate may not be part of Mr. Rackham's vocabulary. Winters, perhaps it is appropriate, Mr. Vice President, when the Dedekind situation is a direct result of your party's repressive policies on religious expression. Rackham, whoa there, Mom. Is it any less repressive than all the tax hikes your fanciful friends will bring in? Winters, our marginal increases in taxation, mostly aimed at interstellar corporations, will result in significant reinvestment. Rackham, listen, hear me out. What our people need, what they deserve, is to pay zero civil taxes. That's right, no tax at all. What's more, I'll make sure the government co-funds every single business enterprise, large or small. Winters, and after the economy collapses, how will you achieve that? By selling off the treasure you stole during your pirate days? Rackham, now that's cold even for you, Ems Winters. Firing off ICE rumors is not a good look on an elected official. Despite impressive viewing figures, many political commentators considered it to be unnecessarily personal and portraying
Mission objective detected.
Federation in a poor light. A second debate is being scheduled, which promises
Roger. Tally present startup engaged.
to address these criticisms through close moderation.
Fighter is clear of the mothership.
The hunt for the Dedekind. Pilots Federation alert. Traces of a distress call from the Dedekind megaship have been detected in the LP-700-1458 system. Vice Admiral Amir Rafiq, a spokesperson for the Imperial Navy, broadcast an announcement on all public channels. An Imperial scout ship traveling through LP-700-1458
Copy that, Commander. Engaging enemy now.
intercepted several fragmentary signals. Their identifying markers confirm that they originated from the Dedekind. We believe there has been an encryption error in the system's communication beacons, which prevented the
Target destroyed.
this call from being rerouted to its intended destination in the Federation. Officially, the Imperial
Target shields offline.
Navy no longer performs joint operations with our federal counterparts, nor do we involve ourselves.
Under attack. Taking damage. Shields offline. Flight assist off. Target destroyed. Flight assist on.
Roger that, Commander. Moving to engage.
Target shields offline. Flight assist off. Target destroyed.
No more contact. Deactivating hardpoints. On my way, Commander. Fight.
shields online.
The activities of the illegal Far God cult. Nevertheless, we are sharing this information as a humanitarian gesture. Our hope is that this may aid a rescue mission for those trapped aboard the lost megaship. The Dedicant made an unscheduled hyperspace jump from the Poponcha system on the 15th of June, while imprisoned members of the Order of the Far God were being transferred on board to be relocated in the Alliance. Executive Agent Jalen Locke of the Federal Intelligence Agency released a statement. It is unexpected to receive any kind of assistance from the Empire, but on this occasion we are grateful. 3 security teams, comprised of 50 agents each, are currently on the Dedicant along with over 8,000 cultists. This is the first indication that the megaship remains intact and that our people are calling for help. FIA specialists are en route to the LP-714-58 system. However, deciphering interstellar comms signals is a difficult and time-consuming task. We would appreciate any assistance from independent pilots if they are able to detect any further messages. Azimuth releases new AX weapon. Pilots Federation alert. Rare goods delivered to Zywanga helped ensure that Azimuth Biotech's arms convention was a success. CEO Torben Raidmaker confirmed the initiative's completion. From today, the overcharged Jimbold AX multi-cannon with autoloader is available at all rescue megaships, as well as Azimuth Biotech's core markets. I am confident that this will prove useful those brave pilots who enter combat with Thargoid ships. Once again, my company has proved that its ingenuity and experience in developing anti-Xeno weaponry cannot be surpassed. I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to all of the corporate, financial and military representatives who attended the convention. Many fascinating proposals were discussed, most of which must remain commercially confidential for now. Suffice to say, the future for Azimuth Biotech and our partners looks bright. Finally, the event was helped enormously by the supplies of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilead signature weapons and Harma silver sea rum, as well as those who eliminated criminal elements in the Zywanga system. I have authorized reimbursement for delivered goods from Musashi and bounty vouchers.
Orbital flight engaged.
Cartier City. News feeds, business analysts and ICE channels have discussed the clandestine nature of Azimuth Biotech's convention. Some wondered if the corporation would be able to function without external financing. Others suggested that cooperation
Mission objective detected.
with mainstream companies may rehabilitate Azimuth in the eyes of the superpowers. The attendance of senior staff from the Holloway Bioscience Institute has also raised eyebrows within
Flight assist off.
the scientific community. An editorial in the Empirical Remark.
Flight assist on.
Holloway's expertise in studying vacuum-dwelling life forms is almost unparalleled. If Azimuth were to forge closer ties with the Institute, the resulting xenological research capabilities might even surpass those of Aegis.
Copy. Deploying the fighter now.
Presidential candidates outline manifestos.
Fighter is online. I'm ready when you are.
The 3 candidates in the federal presidential election have taken part in a second-lived debate to discuss policies. The event was more closely monitored than the first. The candidates discussed their campaigns in detail, with minimal interruption from their
Target shields offline. Flight assist off.
Archer is the current
Flight assist on.
president and the former director of the Federal Intelligence Agency. He could state his intentions to try to secure the presidential
that, Commander. Engaging enemy now.
In her political career, whereas I can refer to many successes, such as the proactive detection bureau, which prove I am a man of my word. Shadow President Alicia Winters, leader of the Liberal Party,
Flight assist off.
Secretary of State,
Target shields offline. Flight
in
assist on.
Jasmina Halsey's administration. She outlined her plans to reinvest in civil infrastructure by increasing corporate taxation. Our economic model will look to increase tax revenue generated by large corporations, greatly improving the quality of life for billions of people through public service investment. Mr. Archer's obsession with police-state programs can only push the Federation further to
Affirmative. Maneuvering to attack position.
toward an authoritarian dystopia. Independent candidate Zachary Rackham is a well-known business magnate who privately owns many federal companies. His campaign pledges have proved highly popular, but remain light on detail. Is anyone else as bored of these two windbags as I am? All politicians do is make empty promises, but I'm in the business.
Target destroyed.
As president, I'll make every single person rich and successful, just like, say it with me, come on, just like me. All three candidates pledged to prioritize funding for the Federal Navy's anti-Xeno efforts until the ongoing conflict with the Thargoids reaches a conclusion. In related news, Congress confirmed that the election date has been shifted again. Refugee advocacy groups have argued that all residents of federal systems lost to Thargoid invasion are entitled to vote, and the active re-registration of this demographic in new territory
Automated docking ready to commence.
has forced a further delay. The election is now expected to be held in the last quarter of 3,300. Deliver rarities for Azimuth event.
Friendship drive charging.
Pilots Federation alert.
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Azimuth Biotech has requested shipments of rare commodities to Zywangda as luxury supplies for its business convention. Torben Raidmaker, CEO of the Anti-Xeno Corporation, announced the initiative via public channels.
Orbital flight engaged.
Expect this prestigious gathering to be attended by many representatives from research groups, manufacturing companies, and military forces. To ensure that our esteemed guests are made welcome, we will pay handsomely for shipments of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilia signature weapons, and Harma Silver Sea rum. The cornerstone of this event will be the commercial launch of Azimuth's newly modified ship-mounted weapon, the pre-engineered overcharged Schwimbold AX multi-cannon with autoloader. Our proprietary redesign will make a significant contribution when engaging Thargoid vessels in combat. Those who contribute the greatest number of rare goods will be rewarded with some of these revolutionary modules. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Corcoran, who coordinates the Alliance's involvement with Aegis, remarked on Azimuth's campaign during an interview for the Old World's Gazette. Anything that increases survivability against the Thargoids is surely welcome. But it does grind a little when it comes from the same organization that escalated the war so significantly. Furthermore, Mr. Raidmaker is placing a positive spin on Azimuth's connections with third parties, rather than admit that it is a necessity. Activist groups such as Operation Witch Hunt have diminished the corporation's stellar influence in recent months. Their actions might have forced Azimuth to rely on external support in order to compete with Aegis. Pilots can make their deliveries to Musashi in the Zywangda system. Azimuth Biotech has acknowledged that transporting these valuable items increases the likelihood of being targeted by pirate forces. The corporation will therefore offer a further reward for redeeming bounty vouchers at Cartier City on wanted ships in the system, in order to maintain local security. Azimuth plans corporate convention. Azimuth Biotech has announced an invitation-only event for prospective business partners and military liaisons. CEO Torben Raidmaker provided a statement to the media. New opportunities have emerged for Azimuth to resume the lead in anti-Xeno operations. With Thargoid fleets rampaging through the core systems, and Aegis's questionable policy of providing utility modules over increased firepower, Humanity's defense once again falls to us. But our organization will no longer work in solitude. I have extended the hand of partnership to selected financiers, military figures, research groups, and manufacturing companies. They are invited to convene and discuss methods of helping us to resist the evil of the Thargoids. Business analyst Marlon Royce published his report via Vox Galactica. Ostensibly, this appears to be a public relations exercise for Azimuth Biotech. However, the company's relative lack of support from independent pilots in a recent Thargoid tissue sample initiative has accelerated the company's search for allies. Rumors among the tech community hint that the convention precedes the announcement of a weapon schematic redesign to whet the appetite of investors. Azimuth is using private couriers to transport guests to and from the convention, entirely at its own expense. This generous professional courtesy also guarantees anonymity for attendees, making it difficult to determine who is on Raidmaker's guest list. Given nerves over Operation Witch Hunt disruption, this seems a wise choice. We do know that Herculean Machines and Space Lanes Cargo are sending representatives. Anya Gupta, CEO of Holloway Bioscience Institute, also agreed to meet with the rival Zeno researcher. But the rest are avoiding being publicly associated with Azimuth Biotech, which faced enormous criticism for its role in the Battle of HIP 22460 and the Thargoid's subsequent retaliation. Kokula Mining Initiative concludes. Pilots Federation alert. A mining campaign organized by Coca-Cola Limited has drawn to a close, with the
Mission objective detected.
organizers declaring it a success. The Federal Corporation requested deliveries of bertrandite, coltan, and praseodymium to supply the Coca-Cola Systems refinery base, ostensibly to manufacture supplies for the Federal Navy's anti-Zeno war efforts. Spokesperson Paul Dyson provided a message to participants. It is genuinely a pleasure to see so many pilots respond to our call for raw materials. Harvesting those asteroid belts is no easy task, but the performance has been remarkable. I can promise all those involved in the campaign that the profits raised from refining and distributing these resources will go to a very worthy cause. Those credits are in good hands. Coca-Cola Limited has confirmed that all contributors to the campaign can now collect their reward.
Under attack. Flight assist off. Target destroyed. Flight assist on. Under attack. Flight assist off. Flight assist on.
Roger. Tally present startup engaged. Tally presence online, awaiting your orders.
Target destroyed.
Copy that, Commander. Engaging enemy now. Bay doors closed. Hangar is secure, Commander.
Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
From Utley Hub in the Kokola system. Imperial Mother in medical emergency. Lady Florence Lavigny, the mother of Emperor Arisa Lavigny Duval, has been placed under medical supervision following a sudden illness. An official statement was released by the Imperial Palace. The Imperial Mother, Lady Florence Lavigny, has suffered an unexpected medical emergency. She is being cared for by a specialist team at her Lake Parizeau estate on the planet Topaz. Details of her illness are not being shared at this time. Her Majesty the Emperor has cancelled all appointments and travelled to be at her mother's side. The latest report states that Lady Lavigny has undergone surgical treatment and is in a poor but stable condition. We know that all citizens will join us in wishing the best for this prominent member of the Imperial family. Royal correspondent Gudrun Vesterkor provided some background to the story. The Duvals always ensure that each emperor's parents are afforded the greatest respect, not to mention the finest medical care. Although the Imperial Mother's ailment remains unspecified, not many fear it to be fatal at this early stage. Though Lady Lavigny's engagement to the late Emperor Hengist Duval brought the highest of profiles, she has typically sought to avoid the spotlight. Despite this, she has repeatedly been in the eye of a media storm. In 3250, her husband Prince Aristide de Lavigny met with a mysterious accident that was never fully explained. Decades later, it was revealed that their daughter Arisa had been sired by Emperor Hengist. Upon being selected by the Senate in 3301, Arisa adopted the new surname of Lavigny Duval to reflect her previously unknown royal heritage. Princess Aisling Duval, Archduke Otto Lombardo Duval, Countess Guinevere Lavigny and many other imperial family members have all sent their hopes for a rapid recovery. A message came from Hadrian Augustus Duval in an apparent attempt to rebuild bridges after his recent public
Wilco, Bay is prepped. Systems online.
spat with the Emperor. As the descendant of another of Hengist's affairs, perhaps
Telepresence online, awaiting your orders. We've got multiple hostiles here. Let's take them out one at a time.
Welcome kinship with Florence Lavigny and most others in the Duval dynasty. Thargoid War Update, June 3309. The latest report on the ongoing struggle against the Thargoids from Vox Galactica reporter Jane Sanderlin. As the war reaches its 8th month, Thargoid invasion forces occupy over 1,000 systems. Millions of people have been evacuated. As a result, although this has little impact on everyday life for the other side of the bubble, it continues to dominate the media. The beginning of June saw the release of Aegis' latest development, the Pulse Wave Phoenix scanner. This module allows any pilot who dares approach the Titans to gather much needed data, triggering what the empirical referred to as a scientific gold rush. We are a long way from fully comprehending the purpose of these gargantuan constructs, but the tools to do so are
Another one down. Keep going, Commander.
least beginning to arrive. Unsurprisingly, Azimuth Biotech also declared its interest in the Titans. This led to the corporation
Roger that, Commander. Moving to engage.
competing indirectly with Aegis to collect tissue samples directly from the hull of the Thargoid motherships. Although there was significantly greater support for the Triton.
Under attack. Pulse attack. Trajectory disruption.
Commander. We've almost broken them. Multiple targets in this area, Commander. Could be dangerous.
Target shields offline. Flight assist off. Flight assist on. Under attack. Flight assist on.
Another one down. Keep going, Commander.
Affirmative. Maneuvering to attack position.
Target shields offline.
They're retreating. Great work, Commander. You really made a difference.
Target is trying to jump away, Commander.
Target shields
Roger that, Commander. Moving to engage.
taking damage. Shields offline. Target destroyed.
Another one down. Keep going, Commander.
On my way, Commander. Fighter retrieval commencing. Sequence complete. Fighter is safely on board, Commander.
Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Superpower agency, no doubt an encouraging sign for Aegis's Professor Test.
Shields online.
Azimuth's results suggest that some retain faith in Salvation's legacy. On the subject of faith, another media talking point was the recent mysterious disappearance of the Dedicant. This order of the Far God megaship pounded for months by the FIA, was scheduled to deport tens of thousands of imprisoned adherents from the Federation to the Alliance. But with only a few thousand on board, the ship made a sudden hyperspace jump out of Poponcha. Theories abound as to its fate, ranging from a simple engine malfunction to the Far God rescuing its loyal worshippers. Even in wartime, it seems everyone loves a mystery. On the front lines, of course, there is no time for such distractions. Thargoid glaives hunt down human ships. Revenants seek to eliminate human trespassers on conquered worlds. Titans launch wave after wave of Thargoid vessels further into the core systems. Here, the focus remains locked onto the deadliest adversary we have ever faced. But the resistance is holding fast, and some traction is being made by anti-Xeno forces. Systems are being recovered from alien control. There is hope that the tide is slowly turning. This is Jade Sanderlin for Vox Galactica. Stay safe out there. Mining initiative begins in Kokola. Pilots Federation alert. A campaign to attract deep space mining pilots has been launched by the federal corporation Kokola Limited. With the Federation diverting considerable resources towards sustaining its anti-Xeno countermeasures, some systems are looking to alternative options for sustaining stocks of raw materials. Kokola Limited is seeking to take advantage of a strong position in its home system by running a campaign to procure additional resources for the local economy. Spokesperson Paul Dyson had the following to say: I believe that continued support of the Federal Navy's efforts to protect us is an obligation of all stellar factions. It would be in poor taste to complain or seek sympathy for the impact on our business operations while our brave military personnel risk their lives to keep us safe. That said, while the galactic economy continues to function, it falls on us to maintain high incomes to fund the war via taxes and charitable contributions. One could say that maximizing profits is our moral duty. Therefore, raw materials are requested to keep our refineries churning out resources. Kokola Limited has invited all asteroid miners to bring shipments of Bertrandite, coltan and praseodymium to Utley Hub in the Kokola system. Presidential candidates hold live debate. Vice President Jerome Archer, Shadow President Felicia Winters, and entrepreneur Zachary Rackham have exchanged political views in a live debate. The Republican, Liberal and Independent candidates came together for an event that was broadcast across all federal media networks. The event provided a platform to outline each candidate's manifestos for voters and engage in discourse on key issues. The debate began smoothly, but did not continue in that vein as the three strong personalities clashed just a few questions.
Lakon, Oscar Whiskey, Romeo. Station services are prepped for your arrival. Greetings, Commander.
Shortly after the broadcast, ICE channels began circulating a particularly popular segment in response to a question about federal policy on public safety. Archer, vigilance will be our watchword, and I aim to continue President Hudson's excellent record on security. Rackham, oh, is that a fact? Lost any megaships recently, Jerome? Archer, it's hardly appropriate for me to comment on an ongoing FIA investigation, although I realize that appropriate may not be part of Mr. Rackham's vocabulary. Winters, perhaps it is appropriate, Mr. Vice President, when the Dedicant situation is a direct result of your party's repressive policies on religious expression. Rackham, whoa there, Mom. Is it any less repressive than all the tax hikes your fanciful friends will bring in? Winters, our marginal increases in taxation, mostly aimed at interstellar corporations, will result in significant reinvestment. Rackham, listen, hear me out. What our people need, what they deserve, is to pay zero civil taxes. That's right, no tax at all. What's more, I'll make sure the government co-funds every single business enterprise, large or small.
Frameshift drive charging.
Terse. And after the economy collapses, how will you achieve that?
Permission authorized. Proceed.
Selling off the treasure you stole during your pirate days. Rackham. Now that's cold even for you. Ends Winters. Firing off ice rumors is not a good look on an elected official. Despite impressive viewing figures, many political commentators considered it to be unnecessarily personal and portraying the Federation in a poor light. A second debate is being scheduled, which promises to address these criticisms through close moderation. The hunt for the Dedicant. Pilots Federation alert. Traces of a distress call from the Dedicant megaship have been detected in the LP-700-1458 system. Vice Admiral Amir Rafiq, a spokesperson for the Imperial Navy, broadcast an announcement on all public channels. An Imperial scout ship traveling through LP-700-1458 has intercepted several fragmentary signals. Their identifying markers confirmed that they originated from the Dedicant. We believe there has been an encryption
Landing gear deployed.
error in the system's communication beacons, which prevented the distress call from being rerouted to its intended destination in the Federation. Officially, the Imperial Navy no longer performs joint operations with our federal counterparts, nor do we involve ourselves in the activities of the illegal Far God cult. Nevertheless, we are sharing
Landing complete. Ship secured.
this information as a humanitarian gesture. Our hope is that this may aid a rescue mission for those trapped aboard the lost megaship. The Dedicant made an unscheduled hyperspace jump from the Poponcha system on the 15th of June, while imprisoned members of the Order of the Far God were being transferred on board to be relocated in the Alliance. Executive Agent Jalen Locke of the Federal Intelligence Agency released a statement. It is unexpected to receive any kind of assistance from the Empire, but on this occasion we are grateful. 3 security teams, comprised of 50 agents each, are currently on the Dedicant along with over 8,000 cultists. This is the first indication that the megaship remains intact and that our people are calling for help. FIA specialists are en route to the LP-700-1458 system. However, deciphering interstellar comms signals is a difficult and time-consuming task. We would appreciate any assistance from independent pilots if they are able to detect any further messages. Azimuth releases new AX weapon. Pilots Federation alert. Rare goods delivered to Zywanga helped ensure that Azimuth Biotech's arms convention was a success. CEO Torben Raidmaker confirmed the initiative's completion. From today, the overcharged Jimbled AX multi-cannon with autoloader is available at all rescue megaships, as well as Azimuth Biotech's core markets. I am confident that this will prove useful those brave
Landing gear retracted.
pilots who enter combat with Thargoid ships. Once again, my company has proved that its ingenuity and experience in developing anti-Xeno weaponry cannot be surpassed. I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to all of the corporate, financial and military representatives who attended the convention. Many fascinating proposals were discussed, most of which must remain commercially confidential for now. Suffice to say, the future for Azimuth Biotech and our partners looks bright. Finally, the event was helped enormously by the supplies of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilead signature weapons and Harla silver sea rum, as well as those who eliminated criminal elements in the Zywanga system. I have authorized reimbursement for delivered goods from Musashi and bounty vouchers from Cartier City. News feeds, business analysts and ICE channels have discussed the clandestine nature of Azimuth Biotech's convention. Some wondered if the corporation would be able to function without external financing. Others suggested that cooperation with mainstream companies may azimuth in the eyes of the superpowers. The attendance of senior staff from the Holloway Bioscience Institute has also raised eyebrows within the scientific community. An editorial in the Empirical remarked, Holloway's expertise in studying vacuum-dwelling life forms is almost unparalleled. If
Frameshift drive charging.
Azimuth were to forge closer ties with the Institute, the resulting xenological research capabilities might even surpass those of Aegis. Presidential candidates outline manifesto.
3, 2, 1,
Manifestos. The three candidates in the federal presidential election have taken part in a second-lit debate to discuss policies. The event was more closely moderated than the first debate in June. The candidates discussed their campaigns in detail, with minimal interruption from their rivals. Republican Party candidate Jerome Archer is the current vice president and a former director of the Federal Intelligence Agency. He explained his intentions to tighten security and increase military spending. Shielding citizens from external threats, whether human or alien, is always my top priority. Ms. Winters lacks any significant achievements in her political career, if we're honest. Whereas I can refer to many successes, such as the Proactive Detection Bureau, which prove I am a man of my word. Shadow President Felicia Winters, leader of the Liberal Party, was previously the Secretary of State in Jasmina Halsey's administration. She outlined her plans to reinvest in civil infrastructure by increasing corporate taxation. Our economic model will look to increase tax revenue generated by large corporations, greatly improving the quality of life for billions of people through public service investment. Mr. Archer's obsession with police-state programs can only push the Federation further toward an authoritarian dystopia. Independent candidate Zachary Rackham is a well-known business magnate who privately owns many federal companies. His campaign pledges have proved highly popular, but remain light on detail. Is anyone else as bored of these two windbags as I am? All politicians do is make empty promises, but I'm in the business of giving people what they want. As president, I'll make every single person rich and successful, just like, say it with me, come on, just like me. All three candidates pledged to prioritize funding for the federal Navy's anti-venom efforts until the ongoing conflict with the Thargoids reaches a conclusion. In related news,
under attack. Flight assist off. Flight assist on. Temperature critical. Shields online.
Congress confirmed that the election date has been shifted again. Refugee advocacy groups have argued that all residents of federal systems lost to Thargoid invasion are entitled to vote, and the active re-registration of this demographic in new territories has forced a further delay. The election is now expected to be held in the last quarter of 3309. Deliver rarities for Azimuth event. Pilots Federation alert. Azimuth Biotech has requested shipments of rare commodities to Zywangda as luxury supplies for its business convention. Torben Raidmaker, CEO of the Anti-Xeno Corporation, announced the initiative via public channels. We expect this prestigious gathering to be attended by many representatives from research groups, manufacturing companies, and military forces. To ensure that our esteemed guests are made welcome, we will pay handsomely for shipments of albino Quechua mammoth meat, Gilia signature weapons, and Harma Silver Sea rum. The cornerstone of this event will be the commercial launch of Azimuth's newly modified ship-mounted weapon, the pre-engineered overcharged gimballed AX multi-cannon with autoloader. Our proprietary redesign will make a significant contribution when engaging Thargoid vessels in combat. Those who contribute the greatest number of rare goods will be rewarded with some of these revolutionary modules. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Corcoran, who called
Space Station. Their spacecraft successfully docked to the station on Monday evening, and they joined Kate Rubins, who has been living and working on board the station for the past 5 weeks. Their docking marked the start of the first crew rotation flight of a U.S. commercial spacecraft and begins a regular cadence of space station missions launching from the U.S. aboard commercial vehicles. It is so great to see you all on board. We'll go ahead and start with any remarks that the crew would like to make and then take questions for them. For media on the phone, please press *1 to ask a question and *2 to withdraw your question if it's already been asked. With that, I will turn it over to the crew.
Okay, thank you. Boy, I tell you, it is fantastic to be up here. The launch itself.
Cassette was how we listened to music in the Stone Age. Anyway, after being dropped, David's tape player would only play tapes in reverse. In 1983, David Oates dropped his Walkman into the toilet. Now, if you're under 40 years old, a Walkman was a portable cassette player. If you're under 30, a cassette was how we listened to music in the Stone Age. Anyway, after being dropped, David's tape player would only play tapes in reverse. Now, at first he thought this was entertaining. There are lots of songs that contain hidden messages that you could only hear if you played them backward. But those messages were placed there intentionally. Soon, David discovered messages hidden in human speech that were not intentional, messages that were put there by the speaker's subconscious. Now, it turns out we all do this. In fact, when we lie, our subconscious actually encodes the truth backward inside the lies that we tell. Now, this is really interesting because that means the truth about every conspiracy is right in front of your nose, if you know how to find it. When David Oates broke his cassette player, he didn't realize how far down this rabbit hole went. Reverse recordings have been around ever since recordings were invented. Thomas Edison liked playing music backward on the phonograph. Infamous occultist Aleister Crowley told his followers that they should learn to listen to recordings and watch films in reverse. In the 1950s, Raymond Bayless and Attila von Saleh would play recordings in reverse to try to hear messages from the dead. This was actually the beginning of EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. But occultists and ghost hunters were fringe cases. Reverse recordings would hit the mainstream when the Beatles started experimenting with backward messages in their music. At the end of the song Rain, the last few seconds of the track are backward. John Lennon said this was an accident, but he liked the way it sounded, so he kept it in. From then on...
Hold on. You're not gonna play it?
Nope. Copyright.
Ah.
Right. So if any of this episode has audio muted, that's because someone put in a copyright claim. Now, if that happens, I'll put this episode on Patreon, but you won't have to join to hear it. It would be nice if you became a member, but you won't have to. Anyway, from then on, if you bought a Beatles album, you had to play it in reverse to see if there were any hidden messages. Now, this caused quite a stir in 1966 after Paul McCartney was in a bad car accident.
Whoa, how the hell did he survive this?
Well, that's the thing. According to the urban legend, he didn't.
Wait, what?
Well, there's a lot to the Paul is dead urban legend. I'll just hit the bullet points. But if you want a full episode on this one, email me or let me know in the comments. But the gist is this. In 1966, the Beatles were the biggest rock band in the world. But in the early morning hours of November 9th, Paul McCartney was killed in a terrible car crash. No Paul, no Beatles.
Oh no, why Paul? Why not Ringo?
Now come on, that's not nice. Without Ringo, we would have never had the classic film Caveman.
I stand corrected.
Anyway, to keep the Beatles going, Paul was replaced by a man named Billy Campbell, winner of a Paul McCartney lookalike contest, a contest held for this very purpose. Billy was taught to speak with a Liverpool accent and how to play a few chords on the guitar. Now, John really didn't like the idea of replacing Paul, but he went along with it. But he did start dropping hints of Paul's death, and people began to notice the hints. On the album cover of Sgt. Pepper's, the flowers above the left-handed bass guitar spell lies. And if you hold a mirror up to the drum, you get 1-1 or 11 and 9 and he died. Paul died on November 9th. Now there's an open hand above Paul's head, which has been said to be either a symbol of death or the representation of a priest blessing Paul at the time of his death. On the Yellow Submarine album cover, there's a hand over Paul's head again. If we open up the album for Magical Mystery Tour, here's a hand above Paul's head. And again, and again.
Whoa.
On the Abbey Road album cover, Paul is the only Beatle not being half stiff, symbolizing he's not one of them. And the way each of them is dressed is symbolic. John is dressed like a minister, or some say like Jesus Christ. Ringo represents the pallbearer. Paul is the corpse, and George is dressed as the gravedigger. And Paul is the only man barefoot. Now, many people are buried without shoes. And in the background is a white Beetle with license plate 28IF, meaning at the time this photo was taken, Paul would have been 28 if he was still alive.
Okay, these are getting spooky.
But the really creepy clues come
Copy
from
that,
the music.
Commander.
At the
Engaging
end of
enemy
Strawberry
now.
Fields Forever, you can hear John saying very faintly, I buried Paul. But that's played forward. There are a couple of songs that give us more clues if played in reverse. At the end of I'm So Tired, you can hear nonsense, but if you play it backward.
Hear you loud and clear. I'm moving in.
And at the beginning of Revolution number 9, if you play the beginning backward. And this kicked off decades of musicians putting backward messages in their songs.
You're really freaking me out, man.
Well, if you're scared now, you're really not gonna like what's coming.
Oh, Mommy!
It's common knowledge that musicians sometimes put backward messages in their songs, and this is called backmasking. Some messages in songs are obvious.
Target destroyed.
Things were a little hairy for a second there.
Some are
no more
not so
hostiles
obvious.
detected. On my way, Commander. Tiger retrieval commenced.
And some are really clever. And some messages are disturbing.
Doctor just says here's some ice we see. Did you hear that? carefully. It says, I want to live it backwards, like the Zep, whose power is Satan. Did you hear that?
Some messages sound disturbing, but they're actually quite positive. Now, these phrases were all placed in music intentionally, but David Oates began listening to regular conversations in reverse. Then he thought he heard words, phrases, and sometimes entire sentences, encoded backward in everyday speech. Now, these aren't placed there intentionally, but are placed there unintentionally by our subconscious. David first tested his theory on one of the most famous quotes of all time.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I hammer, play ball. I hammer, play ball.
Okay, that can't be possible.
David Oates was stunned also. He started recording conversations whenever he could, and he found that everyone was inserting backward messages into their speech, about every 30 seconds or so. David Oates says that human speech has two separate modes that serve different functions, but complement each other. One mode is spoken forward with the conscious mind. The other mode is backward speech, which is encoded by our subconscious. This mode contains emotions, inner thoughts, and our true intent. But as he continued his research, he learned something else, specifically when it comes to politicians and public figures. When someone lies, they subconsciously encode the truth in their own speech. Now, this now becomes very interesting when you're listening to, say, senior members of the government discussing the moon landings or JFK.
I've been telling you the moon landings are fake. Does the backwards talking thing finally prove it?
Well, if you believe David Oates' theory about backward speech, it does.
To speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands. The Lord is that belief. The Lord is that belief.
And I want to thank also all the people on this campaign. Should not be at all. Should not be at all. Should not be at all.
Now, when he first discovered Neil Armstrong's reverse speech saying man will spacewalk, David Oates was amazed, but he didn't think much more about it. He's not a moon landing conspiracy believer, but he got so many requests from people to dig deeper that he started analyzing as many people connected to the Apollo mission as he could find.
The moon landing is fake, isn't it? It's definitely fake. Is it fake? It's fake, right?
Well, I don't know if we can say without a doubt the moon landing was fake.
Definitely fake.
But there does appear to be some information that was covered up. Here's Buzz Aldrin.
Shut out the sun coming in some of the other ones that was into the spacecraft, so it's looking through a
And Neil Armstrong.
We took the opportunity to try to take some photographs of it, but our film was just not sufficiently fast to capture the event. However, this does show the brightest part of the solar corona. It extends several moon diameters. Our film, my fraud.
Another from Buzz.
This seemed to work, but without quite the same degree of control of your stability as you moved along.
Buzz Aldrin again.
We did find that mobility on the surface was, in general, a good bit better than perhaps we had anticipated. They're now preview. That is the U.S. Eagle carrying the olive branch to the lunar surface, and we thought it was appropriate to deposit this replica of the olive branch before that lowers our altitude down to 50,000 feet. We have two guidance systems working for us, They behave perfectly. It lowers our outlier alert.
But who's telling them to lie? Well, Michael Collins might have an answer.
In general, just a series of slides which, in the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on, but I found out this is an issue.
So we know who the masters are. I'm assuming President Nixon also knew?
Credit to the control center in this case. They were the people that really came through and helped us and said, continue, which is what we want to do. There is it's in there.
Neil Armstrong again.
Turns out we're quite busy throughout the time period with the same sorts of things that the crews of past flights have done after their flight. They're mountain towers.
So if we view the moon landing with a skeptical eye,
Definitely fake.
let's listen to Neil Armstrong again. We know he says man will spacewalk, but some people believe he's saying this in the future tense, meaning man will spacewalk, but hasn't done so yet.
Mission
That's
objective
one
detected.
small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Wilco, Bay is prepped. Systems online.
Well, I'll leave it up to you to decide. But before you make that decision, check out David Oates' website, and he has plenty of reversals that seem to confirm that the moon landing did happen. And look, I understand that to some people, reverse speech sounds like science fiction, or at least pseudoscience, and for some it might be hard to take seriously. But there is one group that takes reverse speech very seriously.
Who's that?
The CIA.
Affirmative. Maneuvering to attack position.
If you follow this channel, you know that the CIA has been involved in a large number of projects that would be considered pseudoscience or paranormal. Project Iron Eagle, Operation Often, Project Jedi. These investigated the use of psychics in intelligence gathering.
Oh, was it really called Project Jedi?
Yep, that program was launched in the 80s.
Ah, when the Star Wars movies were good.
Project Bluebird, the precursor to MK Ultra, included experiments in hypnosis and the use of drugs to enhance psychic abilities. And Project Grillflame, Project Centerlink, and the famous Project Stargate all researched remote viewing. And there are lots more programs that we know about, and plenty that we don't. So it's no surprise that the CIA was, or is, looking into reverse speech. The United States government first became interested in 1990. David Oates had been publicly analyzing speeches from President Bush leading up to the Gulf War.
But we must recognize that Iraq may not stop using force to advance traditions. Iraq has massed an enormous war machine on the Saudi border. Simone, in the times of
Now, David didn't know who or what Simone was, but the word kept coming up over and over again in reverse speech analysis of President Bush and other security officials. Turns out, a Simone is a weather phenomenon that occurs in the Middle East. It's a hot, heavy wind that can sometimes exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a cyclone that carries clouds of dust and sand. Humans and animals caught in a Simone often suffocate. In other words, a Simone is a desert storm.
Wait. When was Operation Desert Storm?
1991. The following year, reverse speech revealed clues about a United States military operation while it was still in the planning stages. This information was sent in a memo to Dick Cheney and the Defense Department. Then CNN got a hold.
Theory may sound hard to believe, but it's creating quite a stir in Washington. Here is John Holland. Report.
And today, the brave American and Allied forces are keeping watch along the sands and off the shores of Saudi Arabia.
President Bush making a speech about the Persian Gulf. Could it contain a secret code word which can only be heard by listening to the speech backwards? A longtime aide to Rhode Island Senator Claiborne Pell apparently believes the president and other top officials are hiding the code word in speeches about the Gulf crisis.
Almost immediately, David Oates was invited to Washington to meet with representatives from several intelligence agencies.
He was invited.
Well, he was strongly encouraged. Well, during a 5-day workshop, a senior FBI official said about reverse speech, if this is real, there are no more secrets. And David Oates left Washington, D.C. and returned to his home in Dallas. And that's when strange events started happening, and he was hit with a lot of bad luck. A few days after returning home, there was a drive-by shooting at his house. The following night, he received a phone call. The caller said, "Leave JFK alone," and hung up. David had published some reverse speech analysis of Lee Harvey Oswald that seemed to indicate he didn't act alone and was part of a bigger conspiracy.
Everybody knows that.
Well, that's not the official report.
Oh, you believe an official government report, huh?
Well,
You know what I want to do? I want to shave you down and make a sweater out of your wool.
because I'm a sheep.
Because you're a sheep, that's right.
A lot of reverse speech is interpretation, but David Oates interprets this clip of Lee Harvey Oswald as him hinting to a conspiracy.
The fact that I did live for a time in the Soviet Union gives me excellent qualifications to repudiate charges that Cuba and the Fair Play for Cuba Committee is communist controlled.
Oswald also claims the conspiracy is being orchestrated by powerful people.
And when and where, because of the fact that we certainly don't have any trade with them. We are discouraging trade with that country.
Exactly what people? Oswald gives us a clue.
Well, I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
Sometimes your reverse speech isn't specifically connected to your forward speech, but when it is connected, this is called a congruent reversal.
These people have given me a hearing without legal representation or anything. You shoot the president? I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
Another congruent reversal. Oswald denies shooting the president, but in reverse tells us there were 3 shooters.
I didn't shoot anybody, sir. I haven't been told what I'm here for. You have a lawyer? No, sir, I don't. No free metal wolf. No free metal wolf. No free metal wolf.
Now, many theories of the JFK assassination suggest a 3-man team. Now, the reason Oswald was killed in custody, he was going to talk.
I like some legal representation. These police officers have not allowed me to have any.
Here's an interesting comment by President Johnson.
America's got to be united in this hour, and try to do that in this hour. So I send defender you expect to come. So I send defender you expect to come.
President Johnson addresses Congress.
We must be ready to defend the national interest and to negotiate the common interest. This is the path that we shall continue to pursue. I should have the Drake said. I should have the Drake said. This is our challenge. Not to hesitate, not to pause, not to turn about and linger over this evil moment, but to continue on our course. Here is a con. Here is a con.
Want a flat-out confession from President Johnson? You got it.
On the 20th day of January, in 1961, John F. Kennedy told his countrymen that our national work would not be finished in the first 1,000 days.
A conspiracy like this would need the help of the FBI. So here's FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover talking with LBJ.
Usually the presidential car in the past has had steps on the back next to the bumpers, and have usually been one on either side standing on those steps at the back bumper. Half of the car was headed up. Half of the car was headed up. Half of the car was headed up.
Lots of people were part of this plan, including police. Can we trust them to stay quiet?
Neither of the police officers on either side made any move to push him away or to grab him. It wasn't until after the gun was fired that they then moved. Then there are officers enough to the tail. Then there are officers enough to the tail.
Now, David Oates' research must have upset somebody because after publishing these and other clips, his house burned down.
Wilco, Bay is prepped. Systems online. Telepresence online. Awaiting your orders. Copy that, Commander. Engaging enemy now. We've got multiple hostiles here. Let's take them out one at a time. Hear you loud and clear. I'm moving in.
The survey show that it's helped because I think
David Oates worked from home, so when his house burned down, a lot of his research was destroyed. He was able to recover one tape, though. He was recording when the house started burning.
Whoa, he was in the house when they lit it up?
Oh yeah, this wasn't just arson, this was attempted murder. Anyway, on the tape, you hear someone yell to David that the house is on fire. David then runs out of the room. About 30 seconds later, you can hear one or possibly two people ransacking his office, and David can hear whispering on the tape. David Oates moved his operation into an office building, and strange events followed him there too. His office was broken into multiple times, and his staff discovered a program on one of his computers. Every day at 3 a.m., it was downloading all of his data and sending it to an IP address in Virginia. As is common with whistleblowers and other people with information the government doesn't like, David Oates was ridiculed. When government officials were asked about reverse speech, they said it was nonsense. When asked about David Oates giving a workshop to intelligence agencies, they denied knowing anything about it. But in 2016, the CIA declassified David Oates' file. They were keeping tabs on him and his books. They did take reverse speech seriously. They probably still do. But reverse speech doesn't have to just be about solving conspiracies. You could also use it to solve crimes. You could interview a suspect and then play the conversation back to find out the truth. And David Oates has helped law enforcement in exactly this way. On David's website, you can buy training materials to teach yourself how to identify reverse speech. And David's students have used reverse speech during employee interviews to identify the best candidates. It's been used to successfully warn a CEO not to sign a deal that had hidden traps. Reverse speech is also used in personal development. For people struggling with anxiety or depression, reverse speech has been used by psychologists to better understand the subconscious. It's helped families reconnect. It's given students clarity when faced with major life decisions. Now, some would argue that people go to psychics to help them with major decisions, and that's usually a scam. But reverse speech is different. There is no spirit talking through a medium. There are no tarot cards, no crystal ball. With reverse speech, you can hear the words with your own ears, and then it's up to you to make the interpretation. Now, chances are you were already leaning in one direction. You just needed someone to give you some advice and a little push. With reverse speech, the person giving you advice is someone that you know, without question, has your best interest in mind. That person is you.
I had my path. Then came age. Down the area we're gonna have. Down the area we're gonna have. Down the area we're gonna have.
Well, sooner or later, I don't know if it's all going to be coming out at once. I mean, the one thing for sure is the thing that's on a lot of people's minds is what about outdoors? They must know they're lying. They must know they're lying. They must know they're lying.
So, reverse speech, is it a real thing? Well, officially, no. Reverse speech, and there's a reason for that. The clips I played today are the best ones I could find. I cherry-picked them. Most reversals are kind of like this.
the business is doing well and we're doing well. It's the
what the hell are they talking about?
Well, according to David Oates, most reversals are metaphors. So when we listen to this Neil Armstrong clip, the reverse is wife feel the vomit.
Okay, your bus looks like it's clearing okay. Victoria, they're about to come over the field.
David Oates interprets this, that Neil Armstrong feels like his wife is probably very worried. How about this reversal where Armstrong says, "We were wanting that knob." Stop it.
Well, I really think that had we not done that, we'd still been all right. But it was just insurance. It's nice to get a little insurance.
This was interpreted as something on the lander had been broken and they needed to fix it. But that's really just an interpretation of a metaphor, which will mean different things to different people. This is often what happens with so-called prophets like Nostradamus. Let's look at Century 3, Quatrain 34.
Then the eclipse of the sun will then be. In broad daylight, the monster will be seen. Everyone will differ on the interpretation. Across unguarded, none will have foreseen it.
For a long time, this was interpreted as the assassination of JFK. The eclipse of the sun is the darkening of Kennedy's presidency. The monster was Lee Harvey Oswald.
And the 3 other shooters.
Right. But then after the 9/11 attacks, people said the eclipse was the collapse of the Twin Towers, and the monster represents the terrorists. And I can understand either of these, but I'm an American. These are two very American-centric interpretations. I bet Asian cultures have different interpretations. Muslim cultures definitely do. What if you're Ukrainian? Couldn't the monster be Putin or the Russian army? And maybe the eclipse predicts the destruction of Kyiv or Ukraine losing the war. This is reflection and projection. People naturally interpret metaphors through the lens of their own culture, their own age group, and their own language. And like Nostradamus, reverse speech interpretations will be radically different for different people. But as you can see, not only is the interpretation completely subjective, but so are the words themselves. Different people might hear different things. Check out this clip of Bill Clinton. David Oates hears, "I like the path on my girl Bunny."
With the COVID-19 outbreak on a path to killing 200,000 people and destroying millions of jobs and small businesses.
I don't hear that at all.
I don't hear that either, but for some reason, it makes sense with this guy.
Does it?
Girl Bunny, Playboy magazine, naked lady. Bill Clinton loves those.
Fair enough. So you can see why reverse speech is controversial. The human brain really doesn't like chaos and randomness. It likes order. This is why you see familiar shapes in clouds.
Oh, like that time my grilled cheese sandwich looked like SpongeBob riding a broomstick while wearing a cowboy hat.
That's oddly specific, but that's how it works. Your brain fills in as many details as it can. It's called pareidolia. And this can occur with sound too. It's called audio or auditory pareidolia. When you hear backward speech, it sounds really random. So your brain tries to make some sense of it. This could be why reverse speech is perceived as a string of metaphors. Because how else do we connect Bob Lazar with eloping?
So, I mean, that was the first time I knew that this is really something different.
What was it?
But there are reversals of Lazar that do make some sense.
And you got that job. Before that, you were working...
Before that, I had worked at Los Alamos.
Right.
National Labs in Mexico. You know, you can turn on an electromagnet and it makes a magnetic field. You can't make a gravitational field. You know, when I worked there, I was on the front page of the paper, so they were still able to archive, you know, bring that back from the archives, and you know, Bob Lazar, a physicist working here at Los Alamos, so there was at least something there. This is a pharaoh.
But again, is there real meaning here, or is our brain trying to help us out because some of these reversals do make sense in certain contexts? Honestly, it's hard to say. Now, skeptics will say there is zero to reverse speech, that the human brain just can't process language this way. Well, if you're one of those skeptics, I've got bad news for you. The human brain is an amazing machine.
It's fine. I wouldn't say amazing.
It's amazing. High-end processors on a desktop computer run about 5 gigahertz, so it processes about 5 billion operations per second. That's a lot. But the human brain can process between 10 quadrillion and 100 quadrillion calculations per second. That means a human brain is between 2 million and 20 million times faster than a high-end computer. And look, maybe you can't multiply two numbers as fast as a calculator, but think of all the things your brain does in 1 second. It's controlling the movements of all your muscles. It's monitoring your breathing, your heartbeat. It's controlling your internal temperature, regulating blood pressure and hormone levels. It's growing hair and nails, digesting food, and doing thousands of other internal operations. In that same second, your brain is processing sensory information. Sights, sounds, touch, smell, taste. It's connecting your senses with your emotions. Your brain is making new memories and deciding which ones to discard and which ones to file away. And it's retrieving memories to help you better adapt to your environment. And these are all calculations that your brain does automatically. But at the same time all that is happening, your brain can learn to play an instrument, acquire a skill, learn a language, or learn to speak in reverse. So So for skeptics to say the human brain can't process speech backward, I give you John Austin.
It's the backwards dude. I'm taking my talent out on the street here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
The weather is mild today.
Yeah, the lambs that were there with. The weather is mild today. Ja, wat is waar je weg? Dus ik heb het naast. This is Sean, the backwards dude, giving a shout out to the White House.
Okay, that guy is amazing.
I agree. Now check this out.
Well, yes, Nabidoi. Was serve we bid net. Swanin yashi rebada. Read near zon there with Vladur.
Can you guess what he's singing? Let's play it in reverse.
Rudolph, red nose reindeer, had a very shiny nose, and if we went south, he would even say it glows.
So John can reverse speak in real time, and people are rightfully blown away by this. But all he's really doing is speaking another language. Rather than learn Spanish or French, John learned reverse speak. Maybe not as useful as Spanish, but still impressive. So encoding thoughts backward and forward speech, that is something that our brains can do. And according to David Oates, we learn this at an early age. Specifically, he claims we learn speaking backward before we learn speaking forward.
Copy that, Commander. Engaging enemy now.
Target shields are offline.
Now, is this auditory paranoia? Are we assigning meaning where it doesn't belong? I honestly don't know, but I am fascinated by it. And here's something you can try. Record your daughter telling you what she did on spring break. Or record your husband talking about his business trip. Then play those conversations in reverse. On second thought, don't do that. Sometimes secrets are just better secrets. But not when it comes to our elected officials or anyone that has power over our lives. If just one person was able to use reverse speech to figure out what politicians are really saying, that would be like a superpower. But if an entire population could do it, that would probably lead to anarchy. So you don't have to make a choice. Dishonesty from your leaders and the status quo, or honesty and anarchy. I know what I choose. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. My name is AJ. You know Hecklefish.
At your service.
This has been the Y-Files. If you had fun or learned anything, do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share. I know it's annoying that I ask, but it really does help. And like most topics we cover on this channel, today's was recommended by you. So if there's a story you'd like to see or learn more about, go to yfiles.com/tips. And special thanks to our patrons who make the Y-Files possible. You guys are amazing. And if you'd like to support the channel or just join an incredible community, consider becoming a member on Patreon or joining our Discord or grab something for the Y-Files store.
Yeah, how do you say buy a Hecklefish mug backwards?
I don't know.
Gum shekel, fish shekel. No, that's not right. Gum shekel, fish shekel. I gotta work on it.
You do that. That's gonna do it. Until next time. Tideshir parnra uet it uanda ya keep piesib.
What? You didn't see that coming?
Down when the doctor said there was nothing he could do. 3-year-old Dorothy was playing and then accidentally fell down a flight of stairs. She hit her head and was knocked unconscious. When her parents found her, she wasn't breathing. They called a doctor who rushed over immediately. Dorothy's mother broke down when the doctor said there was nothing he could do. Her little girl was dead. The doctor left and returned an hour later with Dorothy's death certificate and gently discussed arrangements for the little girl's body. But during this conversation, shuffling was heard coming from Dorothy's room. They ran upstairs and there she was, playing in her room like nothing happened. The doctor examined her again. There was no sign of injury. He had no explanation. He said it appeared as if Dorothy had come back from the dead. He didn't realize how right he was. Dorothy Eady was born in London in 1904. Until her fall down the stairs and her resurrection, she was a normal little girl. But after the fall, she started having night terrors. Her mother would wake her and Dorothy would tell her about the dream. She was living in a huge columned building surrounded by trees and green gardens. It was always the same dream, and Dorothy would tell her mother the same thing: I want to go home. When her mother would tell her that she is home, Dorothy would become frustrated and depressed. Sometimes Dorothy's parents would find her pouting under the dining room table. They'd ask what's wrong, and it was always the same answer: I want to go home. When she was asked where home was, Dorothy would say she didn't know. She just knew she wanted to get back there. After the fall, Dorothy would occasionally speak with a heavy foreign accent. This was so unsettling that Dorothy's parents had trouble finding a sitter. When Dorothy was 4, her parents planned a day at the British Museum. They couldn't find anyone to watch their daughter, so they brought her along. That's when things got really strange. As expected, 4-year-old Dorothy was bored in the museum. She moped, she dragged her feet. She acted like most 4-year-olds would act. But Dorothy's mood drastically changed when they reached the Egyptian exhibit. Dorothy was dazzled by the artifacts, but when she saw the Egyptian statues, she tore herself from her mother's grip and ran wildly through the halls. Dorothy was running from statue to statue, kissing their feet, and yelling at people for wearing shoes in the presence of gods. Dorothy's mother was mortified at her daughter's behavior, but then Dorothy suddenly stopped and became silent. Dorothy's parents found her in front of a glass case, frozen. She was staring at the face of an Egyptian mummy. Dorothy's mother picked her up, but she got upset. Then in a voice that sounded like an old woman, Dorothy said, "These are my people." It took Dorothy's parents a few hours to finally drag her out of the museum. But whenever the family had free time, they would go back to the Egyptian exhibit, the only place where Dorothy felt happy and peaceful. When Dorothy was 7, her father bought her a children's encyclopedia about ancient Egypt. Dorothy spent hours studying hieroglyphics with a magnifying glass. Her mother asked what she was doing. Dorothy would say, "I'm trying to remember." While reading a science magazine, Dorothy came across a picture of a temple built for the pharaoh Seti, father of Ramses the Great, in the town of Abydos. Dorothy was confused. She asked her mother where all the trees were and all the green gardens. Dorothy's mother asked her, "What is this place?" Dorothy smiled the biggest smile she ever had in her entire life and pointed to the picture of Seti's temple in Abydos and said, "Mama, this is my home." Children remembering their past lives is more common than most people think. There are thousands of documented cases, and these are just the cases that parents report. There are certainly thousands more cases where the parents are too confused or too embarrassed to report it. One interesting story happened in England in 1957. Sisters Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, aged 11 and 6, were killed when a car lost control and hopped the curb. A year after the accident, the girls' mother, Florence Pollock, gave birth to twin girls. Jillian and Jennifer were identical twins, but they had different birthmarks. Jennifer had a birthmark on her waist that matched a birthmark that Jacqueline had before she died. Coincidence? She also had a scar on her forehead, just like Jacqueline did. When the twins were about 2 years old, they started asking for toys that belonged to their sisters, though they never saw the toys before. They would also become frightened at moving cars, yelling how the car is coming to get them. And the coincidences go on and on. During the Battle of Iwo Jima, the Japanese shot down American fighter pilot James Houston Jr. He died in the cockpit of the plane on March 3, 1945. Over 50 years later, 2-year-old James Leninger started having nightmares about being a fighter pilot crashing into the ocean and dying. When James was shown photos, he was able to name the kind of aircraft he flew. He knew the name of the aircraft carrier he was on. He could even name other men who served with him at 2 years old. And all this information was verified to be true. One of my favorite cases of reincarnation is Ryan Hammond's. When Ryan was about 4 years old and playing by himself, he would pretend to direct movies. Ryan told his mother that he used to be a man who lived in Hollywood. Ryan's parents were Christian and serious about their faith. They didn't believe in reincarnation. But Ryan would often say,
"I used to be somebody else. I used to be big, but now I'm little. I liked it better when I was big and I could go wherever I wanted to go. I hate being little."
Whenever Ryan would see the Hollywood sign on television, He would cry that that was his home and he wanted to go back. Ryan would tell stories about meeting Rita Hayworth, about vacations in Paris, and working at an agency where people would change their names. This is not the typical banter of a 4-year-old. One day, Ryan's mother brought home a book about Wood and they flipped through the pictures. They came across a photo and Ryan said,
"Oh, look, that's George. We did a picture together. Oh, that guy's me. I found me."
The other man in the picture was Marty Martin. He did know Rita Hayworth. He did vacation in Paris, and he did work at an agency where people would change their name. Ryan was right about all of it. Ryan even knew Marty used to dance on Broadway, how many sisters he had, how many children he had. Ryan even said his house was on a street that had the word rock in it. Marty Martin lived on Roxbury Drive. Marty's family was able to confirm 55 separate facts that Ryan got correct at 4 years old. In these 3 cases, like in almost every case, past life memories start around age 2 or 3 and end around age 5. Not so with Dorothy Eady. As she got older, her memories became more clear. It was just a matter of time before Dorothy Eady would find out who she really was 3,000 years ago. Dorothy Eady was very outspoken about reincarnation. She spoke about it openly and didn't care what anybody thought.
Based.
She was, and this was a problem for a teenage girl in the 1920s. Her parents tolerated what they thought was just an eccentricity, but other people weren't so forgiving. One Sunday afternoon, a priest showed up at the Eady's door. The priest said that Dorothy was no longer welcome at Sunday school. She had refused to sing a hymn that spoke poorly about Egypt. But the last straw was when Dorothy argued with the Sunday school teacher that Christianity was based on the old religion of Egypt.
Wasn't it?
That's debatable, but there's plenty of evidence that it was.
And here come the comments from the Christians.
Dorothy had been spending so much time in the British Museum that Egyptologist Sir E.A. Wallace Budge got to know her and started teaching her how to read hieroglyphics. Unsurprisingly, she picked it up very quickly, like freakishly quickly. Dorothy's dreams continued this whole time, though now that she knew what was happening, she wasn't frightened anymore. When Dorothy was about 15, she would wake up in the middle of the night almost every night. She heard the voice of a man named Cora, who asked her to write down everything he said. She would then go into a trance, neither sleeping nor awake, and scribble notes and hieroglyphics. When she woke up, she had no idea what she had written. It wasn't even her handwriting. But after a year of this, she had 70 handwritten pages. She was finally able to piece together that this was the story of her life in ancient Egypt. She was an Egyptian woman named Bentreshet, born in the town of Abydos. She came from a humble background. Her father was a soldier who served during Seti I's reign. Her mother was a vegetable seller. When Bentreshet was 2 years old, her mother died. Unable to care for her, Bentreshet's father placed her in the temple of Kon el Sultan, where she would be raised to become a priestess. When she was 12 years old, Bentreshet was given 2 choices. She could either leave the temple and go out into the world on her own, or become a consecrated virgin and stay at the temple. Bentreshet decided to take the vows. A few years later, she met Pharaoh Seti I, and they had an affair. When she became pregnant with the child of the pharaoh, she had no choice but to tell the high priest about her relationship with Seti I. The high priest told her that her sin against Isis was so severe that she would be tried and likely sentenced to death. In order to protect the pharaoh from a scandal, Bentreshet avoided the trial by taking her own life. Dorothy finally understood everything that was happening to her. For the next few years, she worked at various jobs at a theater owned by her parents. But then she got her big break in 1931. A position opened up in London writing for an Egyptian public relations magazine. The 30s were a tricky time in Egypt. Though it was officially declared independent from the United Kingdom in 1922, the UK was still heavily involved in the governing of the country. Dorothy used her new position at the magazine to advocate for Egyptian nationalism and full independence. While working for the magazine, she began corresponding with a wealthy Egyptian man named Ayman Abdel Mugwid. In 1933, Mugwid proposed. She accepted and finally traveled to Egypt for the first time in her life.
The first time in this life.
Right. And when she stepped off the boat in Cairo, she fell to her knees and kissed the ground. She wept and said, "I'm finally home." And if Dorothy Eady really was reincarnated, now she'd have a chance to prove it. Dorothy's marriage was off to a rocky start. Her husband's family was wealthy and didn't like how open Dorothy was about her past life. She was more committed to Egyptian culture than her husband's family was, and she was outspoken about it. After a few years, Dorothy and McGuid divorced, but not before she gave birth to a son, who she named Seti.
No, wasn't Seti the guy she was, partying with back in the day?
Yup.
So she names her kid after the ex? That's bad form.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, that's like what you pay me for, man.
So Dorothy Eady changed her name to Seti, which means Mother of Seti. And this is how women were known in ancient Egypt. In 1935, she took a job with Egypt's Department of Antiquities. She was the first woman ever hired, but she quickly made a name for herself as a respected scholar. She published essays and articles about ancient Egypt. She translated documents and hieroglyphics. Though Dorothy Eady had no formal training, she became known as an expert in the field. Finally, in 1952, Dorothy was able to take a job in Abydos, the town where she believed she lived. In Abydos, she became known as an eccentric by the locals. She observed ancient Egyptian religion. She walked barefoot everywhere, and she would spend her nights praying and sleeping in the Egyptian temples. In 1957, the new chief of antiquities wanted to test Dorothy. He admitted that she had an uncanny understanding about the ancient Egyptian culture, but he didn't really believe she lived in the Temple of Seti thousands of years ago. So one night, he escorted her to the temple. The only light they had was a torch. He then asked her to take him to different parts of the temple. At this point, nothing had been published about the layout of the temple, and Dorothy had never been there before.
In this life.
Right. Dorothy was able to guide him anywhere he asked to go. With no map and no light, she knew every inch of the temple. After his sixth attempt to stir, he gave up. One of her recurring dreams, or memories depending on what you believe, was of the gardens of the Temple of Seti. But those had not yet been discovered by archaeologists. Dorothy told scientists where to find the gardens. They excavated, and they found it. She said if they dug on the north side of the temple in a specific spot, they would find a hidden tunnel. Sure enough, the tunnel was there. In 1964, she turned 60 years old. And by Egyptian law, she was supposed to retire. But not only was she the first woman to show permission to keep working, she was too valuable of a resource to let go. Egyptologists couldn't explain how, but she was able to make countless discoveries just by remembering. Though her specialty was the Temple of Seti I in Abydos, she did claim to have knowledge of other ancient Egyptian sites. For example, she said the lost tomb of Nefertiti was underneath the tomb of her stepson, Tutankhamun.
Ooh, was she under King Tut?
Well, Dorothy made this claim in 1972. Tutankhamun's tomb was found in 1922. Though the tomb had been studied for 50 years, there was no evidence of a chamber there.
Oh.
But
Oh, I love it when you do this.
in 2015, radar imaging technology showed there actually was a chamber right where she said it would be. A small library underneath one of the feet of the Sphinx.
Okay, my turn.
Go ahead.
She said there's a room under the Sphinx. Nobody believes her. Years later, they do a scan, and bada bing, bada boom, there's a room down there.
Yup.
Yahtzee!
About 30% of Americans, including almost 25% of Christians, believe in reincarnation. Reincarnation might be fringe science or pseudoscience in the Western world, but in the East, reincarnation is viewed differently. It's a central part of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, and several other religions. For about a quarter of the world's population, almost 2 billion people, reincarnation is a central belief. The Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, is said to be the reincarnation of Pema Dorji, the first Dalai Lama who died in 1474. The current Dalai Lama, who was born in 1935, is the 14th incarnation of Pema Dorji. When the Dalai Lama dies, senior Tibetan monks conduct an elaborate search to find his next incarnation. This search involves consulting oracles, interpreting visions, and reading spiritual signs. The senior monks may find clues from the deceased body of the Dalai Lama, such as the direction it faces. If the body is cremated, the direction of the smoke is monitored as a potential indicator for the direction of the rebirth. The current Dalai Lama was found at the age of 2 after a senior monk saw his village and house in a vision. The boy, then named Lama Thundup, was able to identify items that belonged to the previous Dalai Lama, including a drum used for rituals and a walking stick. Now, even though I consider myself an open-minded skeptic of the topics we cover on the channel, reincarnation is a subject I've always been drawn to. There's comfort in the thought that death is not the end. That our physical life is just a temporary experience meant to teach us lessons to prepare us for our next life, or to prepare us for what comes after. Dorothy Eady is one of the most compelling cases for reincarnation that I've ever seen. But is this really evidence? Skeptics will point out that while Dorothy Eady was able to identify many Egyptian tombs, tunnels, and rooms, she also got plenty of things wrong. And some believe that when Dorothy hit her head falling down the stairs, she injured her brain. This injury caused her to have foreign accent syndrome, which is a real thing. The injury also caused her to develop obsessive-compulsive disorder. With her obsession being ancient Egypt, there's no question that if she developed this obsession at 3 or 4 years old, she'd become very skilled and knowledgeable about the subject. And we know for a fact that Dorothy Eady was institutionalized multiple times for mental health issues. Also, all the stories about Dorothy's early life come from Dorothy herself. The fall, her experience in the museum, the trance writing, the time she was tested in the darkness of the temple. There's no evidence any of this happened. We have to take her at her word. But that's the skeptic's point of view. Even famous Egyptologists, who notoriously dislike anything mystical, said that Dorothy's knowledge of Egypt was beyond simple intuition. It was uncanny. Now, they stopped short of saying she was reincarnated, but nobody denies her contributions to the study of ancient Egypt. Dorothy Eady has been called the patron saint of Egyptology. She lived out her remaining years near Abydos, walking distance to the Seti's temple, the place since childhood that she considered home. She finally died in 1981. But I can't help but wonder, is there a child out there somewhere right now, having dreams and visions she can't explain? Visions of a green garden in the desert, visions of an oasis, once again, calling her home. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. My name is AJ, that's Hecklefish. This has been the Y-Files. If you had fun or learned anything, do us a favor and like, subscribe, comment, and share. That stuff really helps. And like most topics we cover on this channel, today's topic was recommended by you. So if there's a story you'd like to see or learn more about, go to theyfiles.com/tips. And if you like the Y-Files, you have to thank our Patreon members. They're the ones who make this channel possible. And if you'd like to support the channel, consider becoming a member on Patreon. It's cheap and it's fun. Or grab something from the Y-Files store. That's gonna do it. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and know that you are appreciated. Nikola Tesla believed that he could harness the energy from inside the Earth and transmit that power wirelessly around the world. His early experiments were successful, but his research mysteriously vanished after his death. There is no evidence left of Tesla's wireless power technology. Or is there? For years we were taught that the Great Pyramid of Giza was a tomb for a king. It wasn't. It had a different purpose. Tesla didn't invent wireless power. It's been here for 5,000 years, and probably a lot longer than that. Okay, why were the pyramids built?
Storage for dead mummies?
Dead mummies?
It's a tautology.
Mainstream Egyptology says that the Great Pyramid of Giza is a tomb built for Khufu, the 4th dynasty Egyptian pharaoh who ruled 4,500 years ago. But the Great Pyramid doesn't have any characteristics of other Egyptian tombs. The Great Pyramid contains no artifacts, no hieroglyphs, and no elaborate wall art. It's been argued that the granite sarcophagus found in the king's chamber once contained Khufu's mummy. There's no evidence that a mummy was ever there. No mummy has ever been found in any pyramid, ever. Ancient Egyptians considered their pharaohs gods. The Great Pyramid is a strange structure for a god. Small chambers, narrow shafts, no markings at all. The way the pyramid was built and the materials used to build it suggest it had a different purpose. The sides of the pyramid are aligned with the compass with such accuracy that only modern engineering can match it. The Great Pyramid is a mountain made of 2.5 million blocks of stone weighing 6 million tons, piled 481 feet high. Its footprint is over 13 acres. To align this construction within 1/15th of a degree of true north is impossible precision. The base of the Great Pyramid is leveled to within 3/4 of an inch. The only way to do this with modern structures is to use lasers. Even though the sides of the pyramid are over 755 feet long, made of stone blocks weighing between 2 and 40 tons each side is within 2 inches of any other. That's 99.98% accurate. Fun fact, the pyramid doesn't have 4 sides. It actually has 8. Each side is slightly concave that you can only really see from directly above, or when the pyramid casts shadows during the equinoxes. And yes, those angles too are perfect. Whoever built the pyramids somehow knew the size of the Earth. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get 3,938.685 miles, which is within 11 miles of the polar radius of the planet. That's 99.7% accurate. If you take the perimeter of the base of the pyramid and multiply that by 43,200, you get 24,734.94 miles. That's the Earth's circumference at the equator within 99.3% accuracy. We know that the ancients were obsessed with equinoxes, when the day and the night are the same lengths. The length of the day and night on an equinox is 43,200 seconds. Now, skeptics will say this relationship between 43,200 and the size of the Earth is forced. They say, well, the planet is different sizes in different places, so this is just a coincidence.
No, is this one of those episodes where we make the skeptics look like idiots?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, good, I love those.
Don't gloat.
Oh, and the skeptics!
Most of the Great Pyramid is constructed of nummulite limestone, the reddish-brown blocks that we see today. This rock is found close to the site and is abundant. But the builders of the pyramid also used unusual materials not found locally. The exterior of the pyramid was once covered in casing stones made of bright white limestone. They were polished smooth and fit together so tightly that no seams were visible. These casing stones were cut and shipped from a quarry in Tura, almost 500 miles away. That's like carrying thousands of 10-ton stone blocks the length of the entire state of Florida. They must have been special. Unlike the limestone cut locally, Tura limestone lacks magnesium. This makes it an excellent insulator. Limestone can carry an electrical current. Tura limestone can't. Interior chambers were built with a rare type of granite called rose granite, also brought from hundreds of miles away. This granite has a high concentration of silicon dioxide, also known as quartz. When quartz is compressed or even just moved, it creates a charge called piezoelectricity. One face of the quartz will have a positive charge, the other will have a negative charge. Connect the two faces together and you have an electrical circuit. Because of this property, quartz is used in all kinds of modern devices like watches, clocks, TVs, GPS units, and on and on. To charge a watch that uses quartz, all you have to do is shake it. And if you've ever used a barbecue lighter, the voltage is created by a quartz crystal. The King and Queen's chambers were built with granite that is 85% quartz. The tunnels and passageways are also lined with quartz-rich granite. If pressure was applied to all this granite, it would generate a tremendous amount of electricity, turning the pyramid into a giant power plant. And there's proof that this is exactly what happened. The idea that the Great Pyramid was a power plant is not new. It was first proposed in the 1970s. It was, and is considered, a fringe theory.
Ooh, those are my favorite kind of theories.
I know.
The fringier the better. Fringia? Fringia. No, that doesn't sound right. What's your problem?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the show interrupting your train of thought?
Sarcasm, nice.
Well, what do you expect? I'm trying to set up the show here, and it's not easy to do when you're jumping in with comments. As more and more discoveries were made over the years, more evidence emerged that the Great Pyramid as a power plant wasn't fringe science, but actual science. One of the most compelling cases comes from Christopher Dunn. He believes the process starts in the subterranean chamber. Below the pyramid are aquifers. As water moves through the underground cavities, sound waves are created. The frequency of these waves resonate with the Earth's natural vibration. As those waves move up through the pyramid, a process is used to magnify, focus, and convert the sound into energy. The Queen's chamber was used for a chemical reaction that created hydrogen, and there's substantial proof of this. There are two interior shafts that lead to the Queen's chamber. The northern shaft has traces of hydrochloric acid. The southern has traces of hydrated zinc chloride. Combining these two chemicals creates a volatile reaction that generates hydrogen, a lot of hydrogen. This hydrogen gas would flow from the Queen's Chamber through the horizontal passage and into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is also made of granite. As the hydrogen gas builds up, the pressure compresses the granite, creating electricity. This electricity also ionizes the air, increasing conductivity. Within the Grand Gallery were 27 or 28 pairs of resonators that would vibrate and emit sound. The hydrogen atoms would organize themselves into waves in sympathy with the sound waves of the gallery. These sound waves further excite the stone, creating even more electricity.
No, so let me get this straight. You stick the shafts into the Queen's Chamber, which gets the stones excited.
That's right, but somehow when you say it, it sounds dirty.
I'm a naughty fish.
Acoustic engineers have determined the gallery resonates at 440 hertz and naturally emits an F-sharp chord. 440 hertz and the F-sharp chord have been connected to a lot of woo-woo ideas, but there's a reason for that. It's considered a sound that resonates in harmony with the earth. The builders of the pyramid knew this. Longtime Mac users will recognize this sacred chord. At the top of the gallery is a small shaft leading to the King's Chamber. The opening is 8.4 by 4.8 inches. This is the perfect size for hydrogen microwaves to pass into the King's Chamber, which also resonates at 440 hertz and F-sharp. Above the King's Chamber are 5 layers of granite beams, stacked and separated by air gaps. This is called the relieving chamber because it was believed that this interior structure relieved the weight of the pyramid. That's not what it does. The beams are smooth on 3 sides, but rough cut on the top. Christopher Dunn believes the reason for the rough cut is this is how the beams were tuned. The builders could vibrate the granite beams and slowly chip away at the stone until they resonated with an F-sharp chord, which they do. The King's Chamber is what's known as a Helmholtz resonator. When you blow air across the top of the bottle and create sound, that's a Helmholtz resonator. Change the volume of liquid in the bottle, or change the volume of stone within the chamber, you change the pitch. The entire complex is a giant musical instrument. Now, some skeptics reluctantly agree that the Great Pyramid has musical properties. But for skeptics to consider the pyramid as a power plant, they would need evidence to show that a giant stone pyramid would respond to electromagnetic energy. There was no evidence of that until 2018. Whether true or not, it's scientifically possible that the Great Pyramid was a structure for creating, harnessing, and focusing energy. The exterior was made of material that insulates electricity. The interior was made of material that conducts electricity. The chambers were made of material that creates electricity. The next piece of evidence is the pyramid's ability to focus EM energy. In 2018, scientists used radio waves at different frequencies to see if the Great Pyramid would interact with electromagnetic waves of a resonant length. Their experiments proved that in a resonant state, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in the internal chambers as well as under its base. Resonance in the pyramid can be induced by radio waves with the lengths ranging from 200 to 600 meters. The closer to 200 meters, the more dramatic the effect. A year after that, in 2019, Eric Wilson published a paper called A Large-Scale Thermal Acoustic Generator. The paper describes how, when granite and other rocks are vibrated, electrons will migrate through the rock and up to the surface. By combining science and music, the builders of the pyramid created a power-generating machine tuned to the natural harmonic of the Earth's vibration that primarily comes from the tidal energy created by the moon's gravity. This technology, created thousands of years ago, could generate unlimited clean energy. But how did they get the energy out? That brings us back to Tesla. His Wardenclyffe Tower was built on top of an aquifer, with copper and iron rods extending down into the water. When electricity was sent into the tower, it was to be transmitted around the world through the atmosphere. The pyramid is also built on an aquifer, and copper pipes and iron rods have recently been discovered there. If the capstone was made of gold, the energy concentrated inside the pyramid would have been drawn to the top and transmitted to the atmosphere. Tesla's wireless power distribution system used the resonance of the Earth, just like the pyramid. And just like the pyramid, the energy generated by Tesla's tower would be unlimited, clean, and virtually free for everyone on the planet. But Tesla's tower was destroyed by outside forces. There's evidence that the Great Pyramid was destroyed from within. In the year 1900, Nikola Tesla convinced J.P. Morgan to fund a project to create a wireless communication system. When Tesla received the funding, he decided to scale up the project. Rather than transmit messages around the world, he would transmit power. Tesla had already demonstrated that wireless power would work on a small scale. He famously had light bulbs scattered on the ground that would illuminate when a Tesla coil was activated nearby. Now he wanted to go bigger. He explained this world-changing technology to J.P. Morgan and asked him for more money to complete the project. Rather than support Tesla, Morgan pulled his funding, claiming breach of contract. J.P. Morgan owned General Electric, which would be made obsolete. He owned AT&T, which would also become obsolete. J.P. Morgan owned copper mines all over the world, and his factories generated miles of copper wire. J.P. Morgan owned rubber farms and factories that created insulation for wire. He owned steel companies and factories that built power generators. He owned timber mills that created telegraph and electricity poles. He owned coal mines that fueled existing power plants, and he owned 24 railroads that transported all these resources around the country. None of this would be necessary if Tesla created free, unlimited wireless power. For several years, Tesla wrote J.P. Morgan almost every month, begging him to reconsider. He wouldn't. Instead, J.P. Morgan chose to finance Tesla's competitors, Edison and Marconi, who were improving on and getting rich from Tesla's inventions. And not only did J.P. Morgan refuse any further investment, but he also put out word to everyone in the wealthy investor class that Tesla should be avoided. He was essentially blacklisted. By 1915, Tesla had accumulated so much debt that the bank foreclosed on the Wardenclyffe property. The tower was demolished in 1917 and sold for scrap. The project was never completed. Tesla was a genius, but he was at a disadvantage. Men like Edison and Marconi knew how to bring Tesla's inventions to market. They knew how to make technology accessible, and most of all, they knew how to play the game. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's why 84% of the world's energy is created from fossil fuels. It's also why Tesla died alone and broke. It's possible that the Great Pyramid suffered some catastrophic event that caused it to stop working. In addition to hydrochloric acid, there are traces of sulfuric acid in the southern shaft. In the northern shaft, there's zinc chloride and ammonium chloride. These chemicals can create hydrogen without being mixed, but if you do combine ammonium chloride with sulfuric acid, you get more than a reaction. You get an explosion. Because of the structure of the pyramid, this explosion could be controlled. But there's evidence that an uncontrolled explosion may have occurred. In 2001, in the Grand Gallery, scorch marks were discovered in the ceiling above where the resonators would have been. In the King's Chamber, cracks have been found in the granite beams. At first, this was thought to be caused by an earthquake, but the damage was only found in areas of the pyramid where the flow of highly compressed, heated hydrogen occurred. The walls in the King's Chamber have been pushed out over an inch. It takes a lot of pressure to push tons of granite out that far. The Great Step outside the King's Chamber also shows extensive damage like that from an explosion, not an earthquake. Other parts of the interior also show signs of charring. When the southern shaft was discovered, it was coated with salt about an inch thick. This would happen if hydrogen was boiling and bubbling up the shaft. What caused the pyramid power plant to explode is not known, but Christopher Dunn believes it was some sort of cataclysm, not an earthquake, but maybe an asteroid impact. There's a problem with this theory, though. The ancient Egyptians kept meticulous records of everything. There is no record of an impact during this time. Dunn believes it happened thousands of years earlier. And that brings me to this thought. Skeptics will say if the ancient Egyptians used electricity, there would be documentation, even hard evidence of it. You'll see true believers point to glyphs that look like light bulbs, but I honestly think that's a stretch. There's no evidence the Egyptians worked with glass or any components used to make a light bulb. So why is there no evidence of the use of electricity in ancient Egypt, and no record of electricity being generated by the Great Pyramid? Well, because the ancient Egyptians didn't build it. There really is no debate by mainstream academics about the who, when, why, or how of the Great Pyramid. It was built by ancient Egyptians in 4500 BC as a tomb for Khufu, and that's that. But what if none of that is true? What if the ancient Egyptians didn't build the pyramid, but found it? And when they found it, it had been dormant for years, maybe thousands of years. Graham Hancock is a proponent of the Orion constellation theory. This says the Great Pyramid Complex is almost a perfect match for the stars in the Orion constellation. But they don't line up to where Orion is today. They line up with where Orion was in the sky 13,500 years ago. We've discussed how the builders were obsessed with equinoxes. The Sphinx faces due east, and on the vernal equinox, the constellation that rose due east 13,500 years ago was Leo. Now, I'll concede the astronomical evidence could be a coincidence, but there is hard evidence that these structures are older than originally thought. You can't carbon date limestone, but there are clues that the pyramid and the Sphinx have been there for a long, long time. Robert Schoch from Boston University believes the Sphinx and Giza complex is about 13,500 years old. Giza has been an extremely dry climate since the time of the pharaohs, but the Sphinx shows signs not only of wind and sand erosion, but also extreme water erosion. The erosion patterns around the base of the Sphinx could only occur if huge volumes of water were washing over the plateau at violent speeds. There's evidence this happened at the end of the Younger Dryas, which marked the end of the last ice age in 9700 BC. Glaciers were thought to have melted rapidly. Within a few centuries, sea levels rose 500 feet. This is fast in geologic time. But as more evidence was gathered, melting appeared to happen in a matter of decades. This would cause dramatic changes in the Earth's climate. But when recent ice core samples were studied, things got even more dramatic. There's evidence that the last ice age didn't end over centuries or decades, but ended in one single day. Some claim that an asteroid impact caused the last ice age to end. A worldwide disaster like the Chicxulub impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. That's not what happened. An impact causes cooling. Recent studies show that there was a major solar event that happened around 9700 BC, basically the mother of all CMEs. A violent plasma storm hit the Earth and overwhelmed the Earth's magnetosphere, which is our defense against solar radiation. Without the protection of the magnetosphere, massive lightning strikes happened all over the Earth. Lightning that was orders of magnitude more intense than anything we've ever seen. This lightning was hundreds or even thousands of times more powerful than anything from a thunderstorm. There's evidence in over 120